I don't know when it started exactly. It was just a feeling at first, one I tried to brush off. I'd lie in bed with my eyes shut tight, wrapped in blankets, hoping to shake off the creeping sense that I wasn't alone. I told myself it was my mind playing tricks, some leftover paranoia from a movie, or maybe just the way darkness always makes you think you're being watched. But it was different somehow, like the shadows were alive, closing in around me. It made my skin prickle with an unshakable tension. Then came the cold spots, random, biting chills that crept across my room, sometimes settling right at the edge of my bed. I'd reach out, expecting to feel a draft, but the air would be still, heavy, and unmoving. The chill seemed to sink into my skin, lingering long after I tried to pull myself back under the covers. I tried to ignore it, chalking it up to faulty windows or some breeze slipping through the house. But the more it happened, the harder it was to convince myself it was nothing. Those nights started bleeding together, turning into an endless loop of waking in the dark with my heart pounding, certain that something was watching me, waiting just beyond the reach of my eyes. And every time I'd wake, that cold would settle even deeper, as if it was waiting for me, growing bolder with each night I ignored it. It happened on one of those endless nights, the kind where I'd been drifting in and out of a shallow, restless sleep. I woke with a start, my pulse loud in my ears, the room suffocatingly dark around me. I didn't know what had pulled me from sleep, but something in the room felt wrong, like the air was charged with static, thick with a presence I couldn't see but could feel, pressing against me. My eyes adjusted slowly, trying to make sense of the darkness, when I saw it. A shape, more shadow than solid, lingering in the far corner of my room. It was just barely there, a subtle outline of something that didn't belong, something that my mind screamed to look away from. Yet I couldn't. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I was pinned by some primal terror, as if my body recognized the threat before my mind fully processed it. Then I saw its eyes, just a faint glow, two orbs that seemed to burn through the dark with a cold, unnatural light. They weren't bright or piercing, but there was a sharpness to them, a malevolence that sliced right into me. I could feel its stare pushing past my skin, reaching into the deepest parts of my mind, filling every corner with fear. Those eyes weren't just looking at me. They were studying me, savoring the horror that twisted inside me, as if feeding on it. I lay there, utterly helpless, my body locked in place, trapped in that creature's gaze. It felt like I was frozen in time, seconds stretching into what felt like hours, until my own fear forced my eyes shut, desperate to break its hold. Even then, in the safety of the darkness behind my eyelids, I could still feel it, watching, waiting. After that night, the darkness was never the same. Every time I tried to sleep, I'd feel it, some weight pressing down, lingering in the room, drawing closer each night. It wasn't just a cold spot anymore. It was like the air itself grew denser, as if something was filling the space, squeezing the warmth and light right out. I'd lie there, my whole body tense, waiting for it to appear. Then the whispers started. Faint at first, just on the edge of hearing, like soft breaths twisting into words I couldn't quite understand. They were low, slow murmurs, layered in a language I didn't know but somehow felt inside, each word seeping into my mind, as if trying to plant itself deep in my thoughts. Those sounds clung to me even in silence, as if it was right there beside me, hiding just beyond my reach. Desperation pushed me to leave a light on, a soft, warm glow I hoped would keep it at bay. But the thing adapted, slipping into reflections, lurking in the shadows cast by even the smallest sliver of light. I'd see it in the mirror, a dark figure flickering just behind me, or catch a glimpse in the window, a shifting shadow where nothing should be. No matter how bright the room, it always found a way to remind me it was there. I tried ignoring it, rationalizing it, but each time I caught those dim, glowing eyes, my skin would break out in goosebumps, my chest tight with an instinctive fear that felt impossible to shake. It was toying with me, inching closer, enjoying how powerless I was to stop it. And each night, as it crept nearer, I could feel it. This growing certainty that no light could protect me. I was unraveling. Nights became something to dread, each one worse than the last, each encounter with that shadow leaving me more drained, more terrified. I couldn't handle it alone anymore. I tried telling friends, dropping hints to family, hoping someone would understand, but they all brushed it off. It's probably just nightmares, they'd say. You're under a lot of stress. They looked at me with that pitying, dismissive smile that only deepened the isolation I felt. No one seemed to grasp the weight of what I was facing. In desperation, I turned to the internet hoping someone, somewhere, might have an answer. Hours blurred together as I scoured forums, obscure sites, even threads filled with conspiracy theories. That's when I found it. A post buried in an old, abandoned forum, titled, "Have you seen the monster of darkness?" The person who wrote it described everything I'd been experiencing. The cold spots, the whispers, the chilling presence that no light could ward off. And it wasn't just one account. There were dozens of responses, scattered across different forums and blogs, people describing encounters almost identical to mine. Some said it came to them in the dark corners of their rooms. Others saw it in reflections. Every story shared the same haunting detail. Those faintly glowing eyes watching, as if reaching into their very minds. But there was something else, a disturbing pattern. No updates, no follow-ups. Each person's account ended abruptly, with no sign that they ever returned to finish their story. It was like they'd vanished, leaving their warnings behind. The realization hit me hard. I wasn't alone in this nightmare, but knowing that others had seen it didn't bring any comfort. If anything, it was worse. All those people, gone without a trace. And deep down, a truth settled in my chest like ice. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't going to leave me alone. And if I didn't find a way to stop it, I'd end up just like them. Another lost story buried in some dark corner of the internet. I knew I couldn't keep living like this, trapped by fear, haunted by shadows I could never escape. My choices felt like they were slipping away, leaving me with just one. I had to face it. If I couldn't drive it away, maybe I could end this on my terms, confront it head-on. So that night, with trembling hands, I reached for the switch and turned off every light, one by one, letting the room sink into pitch black. The darkness wrapped around me, thick and endless. For a long, suffocating moment, there was only silence and the pounding of my heart. Then, from the corner of the room, I felt it, closer than ever before, pressing in, that awful, soul-crushing presence. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there, moving toward me, feeding off my fear. I wanted to scream, to run, but I stayed still, my fists clenched, forcing myself to stay in that darkness. And then it spoke, the voice a low, almost tender whisper, echoing straight into my mind. You are mine now, forever. In the darkness, its words slid over me like cold fingers, pulling me deeper into its realm, that bottomless, eternal void. I felt myself fading, like the room and everything I'd ever known were slipping further and further away. I couldn't feel my heartbeat anymore, couldn't even feel my body. It was as if I'd become one with the dark, just another shadow in its vast, unending emptiness. In that final, fleeting moment, I wondered if I'd escaped or if I'd simply become part of it. Another silent figure waiting in the corners, watching and waiting.